The next topic we're going to talk about is what I call introductions to investigations of digital assets, aka cyber forensics. And we'll talk about why I picked that title more as time goes on. So what we're going to talk about here is if you've not done this before, or if you have done this before, we're going to talk about a process for doing an investigation that includes digital assets from start to end. And we'll also talk about during the course of that activity where some of the tools that you might have heard of are applicable. And some notion of policies and procedures. And then finally, this is not at all a static field, so some notion of resources where you can find other information. So first of all, I want to talk about what the word forensics, what it means. Essentially, what it means, the key point of this is suitable to courts. So the end result of an analysis that involves forensics means that it's going to go to some legal setting. And that's where the term is used incorrectly. So computer forensics it combines the elements of law and computer science to collect and analyze computer system data, network wireless storage devices, etc., in a way that is admissible in court and hopefully will stand up in court and result in a prosecution. So the idea of computer forensics is to do all of these things: identify, collect, preserve, and analyze so that the evidence has integrity and it can be effectively used in a legal setting. Now the reason, along with this, you want to tell a story, as I've told you earlier. Eventually you're going to tell somebody a story that you want them to believe, virtually to the exclusion of all other possible stories for an end. And as I also mentioned, you want to convince either the accused that the facts are not in their favor and continuing with the prosecution, and that you have followed procedures and practices. Because we've heard often about cases that have been thrown out for a process. You know, this information, this evidence was excluded because it was tainted. And that was the key evidence in the court, so the whole case was thrown out. That's ultimately what you're talking about. So you want to convince them that the facts are not in their favor and that the facts are not in dispute. That's the best thing. That's the one that is the least costly to the system, most likely, because you don't have to get judges and juries and all of that stuff in play. Or you want to convince a district attorney that in fact there is a case here, and this is what the facts are, and you've done the timeline, you've done all your due diligence, you've handled the evidence properly, and that it will be successful in court. And then if it comes to this, then you want to convince a jury. Anybody here serve on a jury before? I've had the opportunity to do that. Actually, in New Jersey, it was a capital crime. And in New Jersey, there's a guilt phase followed by a penalty phase. And so that was about 3 or 4 weeks, and we were sequestered, and it's had a monumental impact on my thinking over time. But ultimately, you're trying to convince a jury that the story that you're telling them is the story that is correctly represents what happened. Reconstructed is the word I'm looking for. That you reconstructed the events in the order and in the way that you specified, and that the person that is being said is, as the person who is accused, is in fact the one who did this. So you're telling them a story. So the key idea here is to use that the word forensics is a shorthand word that I am telling you is incorrectly used, because it implies that there's formal methods and procedures, well understood and accepted tools. If you walked into a court of law and said, yes, I wrote a shell script that looked at this digital asset and produced this report, that may not be as convincing, and by virtue of the fact that you wrote it, the information may actually be excluded because it's not a well understood and accepted tool. And a legal setting is the forum for what goes on. So it is, in my opinion, it is incorrect to say forensic analysis. It is more correct to say incident analysis. It's wrong to say network forensics. You're doing network analysis, but you're adding the forensically sound manner. So when we talked about those procedures earlier about doing incident analysis, you can do incident analysis. You can do it in a forensically sound manner, or you can do it in a forensically unsound manner. It's still incident analysis, okay? So that's the key point. In my opinion, is you should always do it in a forensically sound manner so that you do not necessarily exclude the possibility of taking the information into a court setting. But it's not, again, we use the word forensics, that's what's in the vernacular. So when somebody says forensics, that's a shorthand term for, I have done an incident analysis in a forensically sound manner. That's really what they're meaning by saying forensics. So now you know something different. Yes, sir?
I have a question. I just want to, okay, that's from forensically sound manner. That's kind of, I just want to ask you something. Let's say I extract files from a hard drive on Windows. I do it forensically, except once date modified is getting changed for whatever reason. I mean, it's very hard to extract it with date modified.
Sure.
What it was on the hard drive. So is it forensically sound manner or it's not?
Well, if what you've done is you've extracted the information from a target system, you've captured it using a forensically sound tool, you've then made an image of that, you then copy that image and that's your working copy. And then something happens to your working copy, you still haven't perturbed your original image that you captured, so you can still go back and reconstruct that. So you've still done things in a forensically sound manner. But if you perturb your original copy of the evidence, then I think all bets are off. And now you have violated some forensically sound principles. The principle of being forensically sound, and it may be the case that you've eliminated that evidence, the admissibility of that evidence in a courtroom setting. Someone could say, you fooled with that information. I can't reproduce the information that you checksums, what have you, so I'm going to get that evidence thrown out, and it's thrown out, and that was the key evidence in the case, and the case is over. So, as long as you follow the procedures, you can, and you might have messed up a derivative piece of evidence, that's okay, because you can always go back to that original evidence. Okay? So that's why I use the term digital, or an investigation, really an investigation that includes digital assets. One of the things I have found in talking with some people who do, quote, forensics, is they don't know how to do an investigation. And some other people I've worked with, we've wanted to go take police training. Tell me how to do an investigation. I see on television shows, they know how to investigate a crime. And I think what happens is there's this disconnect between doing an investigation and doing computer stuff. Well, it's an investigation, doggone it, and there might be digital assets in the investigation. And you shouldn't just turn around and run screaming in the other direction because it's computer-based stuff. Do you see what I'm getting at? An investigation is an investigation is an investigation. And the fact that they're digital assets shouldn't stop the investigation. You may need different skills, but it's still an investigation. If it were paper, could you investigate it? Well, then that's a different, then that should be fine. That's what I'm trying to get at. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to talk about, this is an overview module, really a 30,000-foot view of a digital investigation process, so that you get an idea from cradle to grave of what it means to do an investigation involving digital assets. There's a lot of detail that's left out of this that you can learn how to operate this tool. You can get certified in using FTK or other tools. You get the idea at the end of this, you'll understand, and as emerging leaders, the idea is that there are going to be people who understand the details and can carry out the process. You, as a person who is leading them, will be in a position to understand the whole process. The devil is in the details. Okay.